Welcome back everybody, my name is Nick930 and today we're going to take a look back at the third game in the Battlefield franchise, Battlefield 2. Battlefield 2 released by DICE in summer 2005 for the PC and was made on the brand new Refractor Engine 2.0. This game was released only a year after the last Battlefield game, Battlefield Vietnam. And a year later, DICE would release Battlefield 2042. So Battlefield games used to be yearly releases back in the day. Battlefield 2 was the first game in the franchise to feature a completely fictional conflict and bring the fight to the modern day. The game also introduced a slew of new features that revolutionized the franchise forever, including squads, online progression, unlocks, and a greater emphasis on teamwork. Battlefield 2 once again does not offer a single-player campaign. It does have a single-player mode that lets you play Conquest with smaller versions of some of the multiplayer maps. There were no unlocks or progression in this offline mode, and it only served as a way to practice and get used to how the game worked. The boss behaved a bit more realistically in Battlefield 2 and took advantage of a lot of the new features like ammo bags, defibrillator paddles, and squad orders. You could even order bots to go to a specific point on the map to eliminate enemies for you if you played as a squad leader or commander. They still did stupid things and would often steal vehicles from you before you had a chance to practice with them, but it gave you something to do if you had no access to the online mode. The multiplayer component of Battlefield 2 was massive and contained tons of awesome new features that changed the game forever. Players could now join squads with up to 6 players. Players within squads could speak directly to each other for the first time using an in-game voice chat, making it easier than ever to work together. Squads had a squad leader that could issue orders. Squad members could even spawn on this squad leader, keeping players closer together and making online battles far more interesting. Squad leaders could also request support from the team's commander, like supplies, vehicles, or artillery drops. Commanders also made an appearance for the first time in Battlefield 2. The commanders were players that became leaders of the entire team. They had access to a menu that displayed all active squads on their team and had the ability to speak directly to squad leaders and give them direct information and orders. Commanders also had access to UAVs, field scans, supply drops, vehicle drops, and artillery barrages. Battlefield 2 marks the point in the series where players would finally begin progressing through the ranks and unlocking new weapons. After ranking up several ranks, you would be rewarded with an unlock token that could be used to unlock extra weapons for every class. Each class had 2 extra guns that could be unlocked, and they generally were better than default guns. Thanks to Refractor Engine 2.0, the gameplay in Battlefield 2 is far more advanced than its predecessors. Graphical quality has increased significantly, allowing for better geometry, lighting effects, and a more advanced physics engine that allowed for ragdoll physics. Battlefield 2 is the first game in the franchise to introduce a sprint button, allowing players to quickly dash across the battlefield before their stamina bar is depleted. This helped to speed up the gameplay significantly and make for a more interesting shooter experience. Battlefield 2 also marks the first time in a Battlefield game where the player could aim down the sights of their weapons. Battlefield 2 featured 7 classes that all had very specific roles that made them all essential to the success of the team. The Special Forces class featured carbine rifles and was tasked with destroying key targets. The Special Forces class had access to C4 plastic explosives that could be placed on enemy commander assets like artillery guns and UAV trailers to stop the enemy commander from being able to use them. Commanders could also repair these units with supply drops or by ordering engineers to repair them. The Special Forces unit could also destroy bridges, which made it very difficult for enemy armor to cross. The Sniper class had access to either a bolt-action rifle or a semi-automatic DMR like the SVD. They also had claymores that they could use to cover ladders and flanking routes to prevent enemies from sneaking up on them. The snipers were a major problem in Battlefield 2 due to their effective damage output and their common tendency to not help capture objective points. The sniper in Battlefield 2 also wore a ghillie suit, making it very difficult to see them sometimes. The Assault class was pretty straightforward. They had access to assault rifles like the M16 and the F2000. They also had an underbarrel grenade launcher that had pretty low splash damage, making them ineffective against infantry. The Assault Soldier also had smoke grenades that could be used to cover advances and avoid being spotted. Smoke grenade wasn't that effective in practice though. The smoke barely covered anything at all, and it faded so quickly it really wasn't worth using. The Assault class did have increased armor though, which made it pretty effective in combat, but it did have reduced stamina, making it not so great for flanking routes. The Support class had an LMG, frag grenade, and increased armor as well, making it a pretty effective soldier when dealing with multiple enemy infantry units. The machine guns had seriously widespread and were only good if you were stationary and prone. The bipods visible on the guns were only for show, they didn't actually work like they do in current Battlefield games. The Engineer class had access to shotguns. You could also unlock an MP7 submachine gun if you wanted something with a little bit more range. The Engineer's goal was to repair friendly vehicles and lay down mines to destroy hostile vehicles. The Medic class was one of my favorites in Battlefield 2 and also had access to assault rifles. The Medic also had medical bags that could be held to heal yourself or nearby players. You could also throw these medic bags so that players could run over them later if they were wounded. One of the best new features that were added in Battlefield 2 is the ability for a medic to revive a wounded teammate. If a player's health reached 0, you are placed in a wounded state and could potentially be revived by a friendly medic within 15 seconds. You could be revived an infinite number of times, which several players took advantage of online and would stat pad by having friendly and enemy players team up and kill each other and revive each other over and over again. This was highly frowned upon, and most servers had a strict first offense ban rule in place for this exploit. In current battlefields, you can only be revived once within a short time. If you are killed when you are revived for the first time, you can't be revived the next time you go down. Players in Battlefield 2 could not be revived if they were killed by a heavy explosive like artillery shells or a rocket to the face. And that brings us to our next class, the Anti-Tank. The anti-tank soldiers were armed with a submachine gun and a disposable wire-guided rocket launcher that could be used to effectively destroy enemy vehicles. The rocket could be guided after firing by moving your mouse, and skilled players would eventually be able to counter snipers easily using these rockets. Battlefield 2 featured a ton of new vehicles that all felt incredibly effective and were something to fear when playing against skilled players online. There were several ground transport vehicles that usually were armed with some type of 50 cal machine gun on the top. These guns could easily be countered by shooting through the windows or the back of the truck and killing the gunner inside. You could also easily snipe the gunners out of the top. Commanders could also deliver these vehicles via an airdrop, allowing stranded players that were far from combat an option to quickly move across the map. Battlefield 2 didn't have much variety when it came to boat transport. All teams had access to the same style of rib boat that featured an M249 LMG on the front and could fit several players. Some maps featured a large carrier that could be used as a main deployment point for the American team. The carrier had a boat bay downstairs that housed several rib boats, an airstrip with several air vehicles like helicopters and jets, and also had a player-operated anti-aircraft gun that could be used to keep hostile air vehicles from attacking the friendly spawn point. Enemy players had full access to the enemy carriers and could sneak on board and destroy commander assets and also spawn kill players. Many servers were against this and would ban players from attacking uncappable bases like the carriers. Battlefield 2's tanks had machine guns, main cannons, and the ability to drop a smoke screen to hide from enemy anti-tank units. Players driving the tanks were warned whenever a hostile was aiming an anti-tank weapon at their tank with a harsh warning tone and a red icon at the bottom of their screen. Battlefield 2 also had APCs, which were great for delivering a large group of players through a battle zone and could be used to a great effect to kill enemy infantry. These APCs also had the smokescreen. There was also anti-aircraft vehicles, but I wasn't able to figure out which maps had them, but I do remember them being in the game. The jets in Battlefield 2 are some of the most brutal aircraft in a Battlefield game to date. Skilled jet pilots could completely destroy everyone in the server with consistent bombing runs, and were difficult to shoot down because of their ridiculously fast speed. Jets in Battlefield 2 were about twice as fast as they are in Battlefield 4, and you can really notice when flying through a map like Wake Island. The anti-air emplacement guns had no chance against a skilled pilot, and if you were on the attacking team in Wake Island, you likely would never gain a foothold on the beaches without these guys coming after you. There are several types of jets in Battlefield 2, including a two-seater jet that players could ride in together, and a Harrier jet that could do a vertical takeoff thanks to its rear adjustable thruster. One of my favorite vehicles in Battlefield 2, though, were the helicopters. Helicopters in Battlefield 2 were far more difficult to fly than they are in current Battlefield games, and you would often worry whether or not the online pilot was going to flip your helicopter upside down and kill everyone inside. There were transport helicopters and attack helicopters, both of which could be used effectively to control the match. The transport choppers could hold several players, and if you were a squad leader, you could have friendly squad members spawn on you and jump out over the objective points as a sort of mobile spawn point. The attack helicopters were two-seaters and featured missiles, flares, and a TV-guided missile that could be redirected with mouse clicks. Skilled chopper gunners could eliminate enemy helicopters with ease, making it difficult to navigate the skies until these were dealt with. Vehicles in Battlefield 2 had no spawn point on the spawn screen, and it was common scene to see players waiting in a line near helicopter and jet spawn points, waiting for their turn to fly. Battlefield 2 featured 14 maps at launch, with 2 being added later on for free. There were also 14 more levels added with expansion packs. About half of those maps were available offline with bots, and only the smaller 16-player versions of these maps were available. The game featured locations from the Middle East like the beaches of Oman, to the oil fields and nuclear plants in China. Expansion packs added nighttime maps, the Great Wall of China, and American highways to the mix, only adding more to the huge experience. This game featured a more balanced overall game design, with players having to start off with the same amount of territory at the start of matches, and each having access to the same weapon unlocks. The default guns for each team were locked to the same team, meaning you could never equip an AK-47 as an American soldier unless you found it on the ground. The vehicles were also more balanced, with each team having their own type of fighter jets, transport vehicles, helicopters, and tools like defibrillators. One of the more unique designs with Battlefield 2 was the Conquest Assault game mode. Some maps only offered one team an uncappable objective, meaning the other team needed to hold at least 1 point in order to stay in the game. In maps like Strike at Kharkiv, for example, it was possible for the American team to control all the points on the map and prevent the enemy MEC team from spawning. If this were to happen, the game would continue until either the tickets on the MEC team ran out, or the American team managed to hunt down every remaining soldier on the field. This made for some really intense moments where you were the last man standing, trying to outrun an army, and attempt to capture a base to allow your 31 players to spawn in and help you. Enemy commanders could easily scan for you and point you out to the rest of the enemy team, making it even more ridiculous if you managed to survive. Battlefield 2 featured several expansion packs that were both good and bad at the same time. The Special Forces expansion pack launched with 8 maps, making it one of the larger Battlefield expansion packs. It featured tons of new gameplay features like the ability to throw grappling hooks, shoot ziplines, use gas masks to bypass tear gas, and even equip night vision goggles to see in pitch black environments. The downside to this expansion is that the maps and equipment were only available in a secondary executable, meaning you had to launch essentially a different game just to play them. It was difficult finding a populated Special Forces match, and if you did, it was even more unlikely your friends had the content or were even interested in having to jump through hoops just to play those maps. The Gyro Force Dlc aimed to correct this problem by making the content directly available in the base Battlefield 2 game. Gyro Force featured 3 new maps, 2 of which were pretty forgettable. It also featured a brand new European team with all new default weapons and unique vehicles. And finally, we have the Armoured Fury expansion, which featured gameplay on the American soil with 3 new maps, a few new vehicles, and several Easter eggs hinting at DICE's next big project. And then there were the mods. Battlefield 2 featured a ton of mods, and the community for the game thrived because of DICE's commitment to offer players access to all kinds of user-created content. One of my favorite expansions was Project Reality, a mod that completely reworked the gameplay of Battlefield 2 and turned it into something far more realistic, with tons of completely new sounds, vehicles, maps, classes, and content. In addition to mods, Battlefield 2 also offered Battle Recorder, a tool that allowed several groups of players to easily create incredible machinima that helped skyrocket Battlefield 2's popularity and cement it as a major shooter game franchise. And that brings us to Battlefield 2042, another one of my favorite Battlefield games. But we'll talk about all that crazy future stuff next week. I hope you guys enjoyed... Oh, my parrot is making a lot of sound over there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel for more gaming retrospectives.